Hey everyone, welcome back to Engelbard Gaming. I wasn't planning to do another episode like this one so soon, but hey, here we are, for a few reasons, and I'll explain why super quickly. First up everyone, there are tons of examples of musical similarities that range from mere inspiration to outright plagiarism. Way more than I could ever cover in one 10-minute video. If you think I showed every example that I knew of in the last video,
well, you're wrong!
I've got close to 100 examples that I could have included, but I saved a bunch in case I ever wanted to revisit the topic. And today, well, I'm revisiting the topic. I'll show you another 10 examples over roughly 10 minutes. And no, I don't claim to know every single example of this stuff that exists. There's way too much for any one person to have all of it in their head, but I do know quite a few of them. So while you partake of this musical pilfering, take a look at some footage of the Metroidvania Astro Knight from my review of that title that almost nobody watched. I'll put the link in the description if you want to know more about that game. Once again, I have to keep these clips short to try and avoid those copyright demons. Let's get on with it. I'll begin this one gently, with one that's probably more accidental than anything else. Everyone knows Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley, right? It's the song from the internet phenomenon known as the Rickroll that some of you watching this video may actually be too young to remember. SNES RPG fans may notice a similarity to a certain character's theme from Squaresoft's classic RPG Chrono Trigger. Listen to these snippets of Astley's famous song and Robo's theme. Now in this case, the composer of Robo's theme, Yasunori Mitsuda, stated in an interview that he'd never heard of Rick Astley before and never heard Never Gonna Give You Up. Still, that's a pretty noticeable similarity. I think in Mitsuda's case, the most likely scenario is he'd heard Never Gonna Give You Up somewhere without even realizing it, and that part of the music just stuck with him. What do you all think? Was this one accidental or on purpose? Let's move on to something that a few of you brought up in the comments last time. One game notorious for having music that veers a little too far from inspiration and towards appropriation is id Software's classic FPS Doom. There are multiple examples, and in many of them the original songs are actually referenced in the game's metadata. Here's just one example. Well, there's not much room for argument there, huh? Let's just move on. Here's a deep cut for you old-timers like me watching this. The Commodore 64 version of Turrican features a couple of songs that were 100% ripped off from 1986's Transformers the Movie. The animated movie from back then, the really good one. Go ahead, give these a listen. I was kind of shocked the first time I heard this music in the C64 version of Turrican's soundtrack, and thought that it must have been licensed or something, but nope. In this case, 2 entire songs were just taken. For shame, Ramiro Vaca. There's no defending that one. Let's end this section of the video with another really well-known song, Glenn Frey's The Heat Is On. If you were around in the 1980s, you heard this song, probably a lot. Somebody else apparently heard it a lot. Tarkun Kidon, who handled the NES version of POW's soundtrack, at least he's the one credited for it. POW was a conversion of an arcade game that is usually best described as Double Dragon in Vietnam. The second boss song in the game, which is not in the original arcade version by the way, sounds a smidge familiar. Have a listen. Yep, once again, pretty blatant. I'll also note the arcade version of POW's soundtrack featured a song heavily inspired by the iconic James Bond theme, But that's a story for another time. We've got bigger fish to fry today, and it's time to move on to the second half of this video, dedicated entirely to, once again, Koji Kondo. About 6 or 7 of you were super passionate about Kondo in the comments last time, and thought that I was being unfair to him. Well, you 6 or 7 people really won't like this section then, because I'm going to show you examples that are even more blatant than last time. This will cement Kondo as the Plato of pilfering, the Leonardo of larceny, the Tesla of taking. Okay, that's enough. Let's jump in. First up, there's a song way back from 1963 called Green Green from the New Christie Minstrels. This is one that I knew about and didn't include in the last episode because I wanted to save it for later. Check it out and listen to the Super Mario Overworld theme right after.
Green, green, it's green they say, on the far side of the hill. Where the grass is greener still.
Yeah, it's not identical, but it's very close. If this were Kondo's only example, I could let it slide. But as you've seen, it's not even close to his only example. But if you're not convinced, listen to this next one. There's another older band called Bonzo Dog Band, and they released an album called Kanesham in 1969. The title song on the album is one that Koji Kondo may have just had slightly in mind while working on the Wing Cap theme for Mario 64. Anyone want to try and explain that one away and say those songs sound nothing alike? Well, wait, there's more! Mr. Kondo may have drawn just a smidge of inspiration from Genesis, the old Phil Collins band, not the game system. There's a song called Stagnation from Genesis, and 6 minutes and 54 seconds or so into that song, you may recognize a certain progression or motif. It's pretty close to Kakariko Village from A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. A lot of people also point to the John Dunbar theme from Dances with Wolves. That one is a bit different, but I understand why they bring it up. The SNES version of Kakariko Village especially seems to combine the orchestral breadth of that song with that portion of the melody from Stagnation. Okay, next up, let's return to The Planets by Gustav Holt. And by the way, folks, this is from 1916. And most musicians, especially those who work within the classical field, have heard this. Now this time we'll listen to a few sections of Jupiter. I have a feeling most of you will pick up on which song borrows heavily from Jupiter. It's pretty close to Saria's song that plays in the Lost Woods of Ocarina of Time. Listen to these segments. Now, I could see a little bit of an argument here that one was more inspiration than just lifting, but, it's pretty close. I'll tell you what, I'll give you a pass if you want to defend Kondo on that one. We'll just move on to the next example. I'm going to play a short clip from a song from a 1991 anime named Dodge Danpei. The series aired in Japan and just a few other territories back in those days. The song is the Spin Tornado Shot theme, composed by Ryuichi Katsumata. Zelda fans will instantly recognize the melody played on the electric guitar. It's pretty much the exact melody from the Gerudo Valley song from The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time on N64. Once again, you can't explain that one away. And this one has an interesting side story. Nintendo hired Ryuichi Katsumata, the composer of the original anime song in 1998, not too long after Ocarina of Time's release. He worked on one project for them in 1998 and a couple in 1999, including an arrangement album called The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Hyrule Symphony. Maybe that's all just a coincidence, but the cynic in me can't help but doubt the timing of his hiring. By the way, he was in the middle of scoring a hentai anime when he was hired by Nintendo. Let's finish up with just a little more Zelda. This one, I'll explain just a little bit at the end. We'll listen to a short segment of the song April from Deep Purple. It's another one that's going to be pretty obvious, but we'll listen to the dungeon theme from the original Legend of Zelda for NES right after. Now the added context here is that Kondo was in a Deep Purple cover band, so he knew that song very well. This isn't an example where anyone could realistically say that Kondo just took that progression by accident. Alright, and that's where I'll end it today. Once again, as I close this, let me tell you that there are lots more examples and lots more games that I still know about. There are several more examples from Koji Kondo alone, and I've gone through 12 of them already between this video and the last one. If you missed the last episode, I said that every musician is inspired by songs that they've heard, and that's normal. That remains true. However, what isn't normal is taking either entire songs or sections of songs that exist and just calling them your own. And changing just one or two notes is not a defense against plagiarism either. If a speechwriter plagiarizes one paragraph in a 20-page speech, that's still plagiarism, and many have been rightly called out for that in the past. Everyone needs to be treated the same. It doesn't matter if we love or hate their work. As a side note, I probably won't do another episode on this topic for at least a few months. I'll revisit it eventually, but I need to move on to my regular stuff, and I feel like after this video, I've covered this pretty sufficiently for a long while. Alrighty, so now it's your turn. Let me know what you think once again. Do you give any of the composers in today's episode a pass? Did you know about these examples already, or was this the first time you've heard them? What are some of the worst examples of this stuff you've seen yourself? Tell me all about it in the comments. That'll do it for this video, my retro gaming friends. If you enjoyed it, please like and share it online somewhere. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of my videos. If you want to support the work that I do here, you can do so on Patreon, Ko-fi, or right here on YouTube through channel memberships. With that, I'll say thanks for watching, and see me later.